Grab a cigarette and a beer. You ain't going nowhere. Welcome to the power movement.
Welcome to the Powell Movement. I'm your host, Mike Powell, and this week my guest is a guy that I've been trying to get on the show for a while. He's known to the world as B-Dog, but if you don't know him as that, his name is Phil Casabon. Phil is one of those once or twice in a generation skiers that is different than the rest. While everyone wants to make their skiing look good, Phil's brand of skiing is the definition of style. Rather than spending his career focusing on doubles and crazy spins, Phil has focused on style before everything. And between the way he skis and the way he edits, his brand of skiing is truly one of a kind. And on top of that, he's a super interesting guy. Before we get into the podcast, this is the place where I'd normally share a little bit about what I did during the trade show in Denver. But I'm recording this before I went to Denver, so I'll share my trade show thoughts next week. But I still want to ask you to do a few things for me. The first is subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to it, and tell a friend or a stranger to do the same. Next, I want you to follow me on Instagram at The Powell Movement. And finally, I want you to support my great sponsors who make this show happen. They are Evo, Stanley, Spy Optic, 686, and the 10 Barrel Brewery. Now, let's talk to Phil Casabon. I guess we should start this thing off with your injury. I think you received a rite of passage as a skier and did your ACL or did something to your knee. What'd you do and how'd you do it?
Yeah, I torn my ACL ligament early December. I just started getting after it pretty early on with my good friend Brady, and we were having a good go at it. And just on a classic down rail with a donkey, I was trying to press and spin out and got caught off guard off the donkey and hit the ground a bit twisted, a bit backseat, and my knee just couldn't endure the blow and just let go. And it was a pretty big trauma, actually. It was quite painful.
Where are you in the stages of recovery? Because it really sucks to hurt your knee in December when you want to be skiing all season.
Yeah, definitely. There's no proper time, but right now I'm just right before surgery. So 10 days before surgery, I'm feeling great and have a great connection with the surgeon, which is the father of Phil Marquis, which was competing in moguls at Olympics quite a bunch. So he's done Phil Belanger knee and the whole Nordique team knee. He's done like most of the Quebec skiing guys knee. He's awesome. So he took me in early and he's really understanding. So I'm happy that I'm under good hands.
And I would think as an athlete, especially one that has like such an influence on the sport right now, that you're used to a ton of chatter about you during this time of the season because people are expecting some big things. And is it mentally difficult for you to have to go away pretty much for a year and watch your peers move forward?
Right, yeah, it's definitely tricky and it's difficult, but I tend to accept things quite faster than I once did just because it is what it is, and therefore I can only move on and focus on being healthy. And there's also like a huge realm of other opportunities that presents themselves in the midst of the silver lining appears. So I'm not that worried and also very optimistic about the future of this.
Is it really shitty when you have to make those phone calls to team managers and like, hey man, I just hurt myself and that's my season?
Really shitty. Yeah, that was the worst part. And that got me anxious quite a bit. I was like, I was pushing it back day by day and it was eating me up inside. But at some point I did it and everybody's response was very, very optimistic. So I was like very pleased about it. Everybody's got my back with the companies. I've been loyal to these companies for a while for the most part. So those guys also are loyal to me, and it's cool to maintain that sort of relationship in kind of this world that is not disloyal, but I can be treated like a sheep. There's a bunch of athletes out there that do their thing, so it's fun to have the support of these companies.
Yeah, because a lot of times people are treated like horses, and when horses go down, they have to be shot. In skiing, I feel like you have to go down 2 or 3 times in a row before people will stop being like, hey, we're going to renew a contract. But I would think there's always uncertainty with every injury, and that's scary for a person in your position.
Yeah, definitely. But luckily, I have been doing my thing and my image is set in stone. So therefore, this is just going to propel me in a different direction. And when I'm going to come back, I'm going to come back wiser with a different approach. And they're aware of that. It's not my first one. So I'm glad that I could speak my way out of it and that they are comprehensive and compassionate.
Yeah, if anybody didn't have your back, they would be crazy just based on everything that you do. And I'm going to talk about injury for a little bit longer because you're known for creative style in the streets. Those come with a lot of flat or weird landings and non-traditional features. And I talk about this a bunch in podcasts, but how many concussions do you think you've had over your career?
I was trying to figure it out. I can't remember. Right? No, but seriously, like 6 or 7, too much. And that definitely gets me. But I try to figure out alternate medical loopholes that I can help out my situation because I know it causes like problem in the neuropathic section of the brain. And I found medicine that do help out that aspect. So I'm trying to not worry about it because I think worrying about it also accentuates it. So I figure out my effects, whether they're placebo. I still believe it enough that I think I'm being helped by these medicines.
From what I see, I don't think do you ever wear a helmet skiing?
No, unless it's obligated, which in the park here in Quebec it is. So in the park in Quebec I do.
Okay, because I'm not one to judge by any means. I think everything looks better without a helmet, even though I always wear them. But what's your reasoning behind not wearing one?
It's mainly because of comfort. For a while I had dreads also, and the dreads under the helmet was a big weight, and also my dreads would be kind of stuck up and all in my neck, and it would not enable me to access all the movement that I would normally be capable of doing. And also, I'm like, yeah, if I put a helmet on, I'm planning to hit my head. If I don't put it on, I'm not planning on doing so, but it's like, it's a stupid thought.
I've heard it before.
Yeah, right? I've had concussions with a helmet and without. Mainly, the most concussions that I had were due to my teeth hitting together and my brain being shaken from it. So I wear a mouthpiece. That's my protective equipment.
Well, we're going to get away from injuries now because that's the shitty part to talk about. And we'll start with your life and times. And you're born in Quebec, and I think you grew up pretty much right next to your home ski hill. Which hill is that?
It's Vallée du Parc, and yeah, I grew up right in front of it, and I bought a house right in front of it again.
Awesome. Well, you started skiing, I think, at age 2. I took my kid skiing at age 2, and it was like 2 runs, then hot chocolate. I couldn't really tell if he liked it. And I'm sure you don't remember any of that, but what did your folks say about that at the time? Were you super into it as a little kid?
No, I was really reluctant about it. I wasn't down with it. And I guess I got into it when my brother and I started vibing more, and my parents put me in the ski competition race team very young.
Like 6 years old, right?
Yep. But once I was done with the ski race team, like as far as like our schedule for the day were 9 to 12. At 12, when I could free ski, I started loving it. I was like, damn, this is the shit. Like I can go anywhere and jump off stuff.
But you raced for like 5 years. I mean, I guess you went free skiing afterwards, but were you good at racing as a young kid?
I guess relatively to my small part of the space I'm in, I won every race that I was in for those 5 years. So I was decent.
Does that put extra pressure on you from the coaches? Like they look at you like, Phil's going to be the best and we have to just put more attention to him?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I don't really remember. I don't think I was being treated that way. I think I had, in my memory, very good coaches that were treating everybody equally, luckily.
And the whole race world is structured. There's a lot of rules, and that's kind of, if you look at what you do today, it's all about not having rules and being creative. But was there a breaking point in racing with you where you were just like, I do not want to do this anymore. It's not fun?
Yeah, I guess the movie from Poor Boys Production, The Game, when I was made aware that people were doing that and having sponsors, and I didn't understand how it worked, but I was like, way better option than trying to do those race things and everything. So that was a breaking point, I think, when my brother and he bought it because I didn't have money. My brother bought the game and he played it on the VHS, and we both got into it.
Were your parents okay with you quitting racing?
Yeah, I think they were concerned for a little bit, but at the same time, they've always been really supportive of me taking a decision and running with it. So, yeah, I think they were supportive in it.
How about other sports? I mean, all Canadians are supposed to play hockey, or at least that's what we hear down here in America. Did you play hockey or any other team sports?
I was a big soccer guy. In the summer, I was doing the soccer thing for a while, loving it. I actually never even played in a team of hockey since we were a ski-orientated family, and that's what we would do. We would go skiing. We would definitely go ice skating, let's say, but I never really bought a hockey stick to play hockey since skiing was my thing, really.
Did you play soccer through high school?
No, I quit at high school when skiing started to get a little more serious for me. And also, the dynamic of the soccer team wasn't fitting me anymore because people weren't necessarily into it. I was trying to get on the field and win and do good games, and other people really didn't give a fuck as much. So it was hard for me to get behind it because I didn't have support really from the team. And also the coaches were not the greatest. So I was I'm gonna just be an individual in something, and I can grow at my own pace and find people that have their pace and let them be and let myself be.
Cool. We'll go back to the game, and I think you might have royalty as well. Back then, skiing was just starting to get cool. Snowboarding had absolutely blown up at a time when skiing was kind of in a different world. Snowboarding was more mainstream. Did you ever snowboard at all? Or did the videos of skiing help create a blank canvas of what skiing could be for you?
Yeah, fully. No, I never had put a snowboard in my feet before 18 years old probably, and it was really just skiing and trying to get better. I was looking at the game and you mentioned royalty. Royalty came a little after the game for me. That implicated more style to me, more style orientated thinking. And also that was the time where crews started emerging at my local resort where skiers were trying to be Mikhail. This dude was acting like Mikhail. This other dude was skiing like Pollard, and he had the kit of Pollard, let's say. So that's really when style started to take over.
And how many times do you think you watched those videos on VHS?
Hundreds.
Okay.
Yeah, probably hundreds. Definitely not as much as when the DVDs came out. That was another thing.
And with these videos, I think your vision of what skiing is changes, and skiing was changing. And I won't say free skiing was born, because I think the hot doggers of the Sun Valley days started that. Then the Plakes and Schmidt kind of pushed that further. And then come the new Canadian Air Force, Shane Zox, and the invention of the modern twin tip. That brings skiing to where it is today. And what was your first pair of twin tips?
Yeah, well said. The Salomon 1080 for kids, the classic, just great nostalgia thinking about that model.
The yellow ski?
Yep.
And you head straight to the terrain park and just focus on jumping from there?
Yeah, exactly. I was helping out my parent with house chores, but I didn't have a bank account or money. So my parents got me the skis. I was still in a competition race team, and I would bring my skis at the racing competition. And as soon as I would done, they were down there waiting for me, and I would put them on and go in the park and watch the older dudes do their thing, and just try probably hit that 40-footer today and just knuckle the shit out of it and come back the next day and do the same.
Are you wearing spandex? Because I just think of you going from a race to the park and think of you wearing spandex in the park.
That's a breaking point also in the racing thing is at 11, I was old enough now that people were starting to wear spandex, and I refused to do that. I didn't want to get down with it, and people had a serious advantage over me, so that was I'm not getting with it. I got to do something else.
And I know skateboarding and wakeboarding is something that you did, and I believe you still do it, but I've seen clips of you later in life rollerblading at Woodward with legends Brian Shima and Dave Lang. Did you blade as a kid too?
Yeah, exactly. I had nothing except for skiing. That was my main thing. But otherwise, I would do scooter, I would do skateboard, I'd do rollerblade, wakeboard, whatever it was, just to have fun and connect with people and sort of be in the scene where people were moving. So yeah, I started blading at around 12, got a pair of Salomons, Vinnie Minton, and yeah, that was a good help and also great fun towards skiing and just towards rollerblading.
And it's kind of funny that you've done projects later on in life with Tanner Hall, and there was a time where Tanner would end up at an award ceremony and grab microphones and just shit talk on rollerblading. But fast forward to when you work with him, I'm sure there was nothing said about it, and I even think I've seen him on blades at Woodward in the foam pits.
Yeah, definitely. He had his moment where rollerblading in general was hated. I remember I brought him to Whistler the first time I went into a summer camp, which was at 14 years old, and I was at the skate park rollerblading, and this dude started running after me like, "What, you gonna fruit boot in here?" And he started chasing me, and I was so scared. This dude was huge, and he chased me out of the park into the village. Like, he ran for me for a while, and I didn't go back to that skate park afterwards.
It's looked at as not cool in a lot of places for some reason, but in Canada, it's like a fighting thing from what I found.
Yeah, it's wild, man. I definitely never got behind that, but that was more West Coast mentality with that stuff. Here, I never had problems when I did rollerblade. Some people would make more fun, like calling me a ballerina. I was spinning 540s and shit, but it was all jokes and fun. Nobody would take it as seriously as like going to fights and stuff. But yeah, it's funny. I feel people might have felt like threatened by maybe it becoming popular or something. I don't know what it is.
It definitely can help your skiing, I feel like, just because of the movements that you're doing. But you're also spending a lot of time on the trampoline, and are you working on tricks that easily transfer over to snow for you as well?
Actually, the way I would see it, I would jump on a trampoline and do like trampoline tricks, and I wouldn't necessarily think of it as helpful. I was just like happy to be in the air at that point, just like jumping around. I don't think that I was doing the trampoline, although probably subconsciously knowing that it would help me and it's all in the same realm, but I was really doing the trampoline thing just to bounce because I was bored.
So you were never putting on short skis, taping up edges, and learning tricks?
Never done it.
Okay. Were you super into the scene back then, like heading to the premieres that went your way and looking up to the pros in your town?
Yeah, very much so. As soon as my friend got his driver's license, which he was 3 years older than me, so at 13 or 14, the first premiere I remember going at that was really mind-blowing was Exact Science. They had done it in a church in Quebec City, and it was insane. Like, the place was jump off, and I had no idea that there was that big of a scene in Quebec itself.
And in these years, you were like the little kid that was killing it in your little bubble, and were you like the little guy that was on the podium a lot that everybody was talking about?
Yeah, eventually I was winning the like amateur competitions, and at some point towards 14 years old, I started to win bigger events, and my family being really supportive and seeing that I had a drive and a talent, they would bring themselves as well because they love to ski. So we would go to Mount Snow for the Mount Snow Open and to Vermont Open in Stratton, and I would partake these events and do fairly well, like getting first and third over there. So it went fast that I was doing well.
Now it is time for me to take a quick sponsor break, and my first sponsor is Evo, and they are a place I started shopping at way before they started supporting my podcast. Why? Because Evo does it all. Online, they have the best deals on the interwebs, and they offer free shipping on orders over $50, a low price guarantee, and the no-hassle return policy makes it easy to send things back if you have to. They also have stores in Seattle, Portland, Denver, Whistler, and I've been reading a whole lot about a Salt Lake City location in the works. In store, you are going to find all the brands, all the products, art, and a lot of passionate people who want to help you get dialed in for your next adventure. And for listening to the show, I've got a new deal from Evo for you on all Evo branded products. And everything they make is just as good or better than the big brand stuff. To get the deal, head on over to evo.com, shop the branded products. When you check out, enter the code POWEL20 That's all one word, and you'll save 20% on your Evo stuff. My next sponsor is Stanley, another iconic Seattle brand that has been ahead of the curve since 1913. While we all know Stanley for creating those iconic green bottles that kept your grandpa's coffee hot all day long, they still do that, and a whole lot more these days. They still are all about adventure, and they still are all about keeping your beverages hotter or colder than any other product ever created. Aside from being the leader in hot and cold, Stanley has always been the right choice when it comes to the planet. If you're still using single-use plastics for your beverages, it's time to make a change for the environment, and I'm going to make it easier than ever to do. Head on over to stanley-pmi.com, buy some stuff, and when you check out, enter the code POWEL, the number 30, all one word, and you're done. You'll get 30% off your entire order. My next sponsor is new to the show, but 686 has been a fixture in the world of snow and independently owned, which is a rarity these days, since 1992. When it comes to technical outerwear, 686 is known for pushing the boundaries of design and construction. The fit and function of my 686 gear is better than anything I've ever owned. And what I'm quickly learning is that 686 gloves are hands down the best, most durable gloves I've ever used. From their industry-leading pre-curve fit to the mobile phone-friendly Sound Touch forefinger and thumb, 686 has thought of all the details. But don't just take it from me. 686 gloves are the only thing you'll find on the hands of athletes like Forrest Bailey, Parker White, Sammy Lubke, Matt Belziel, and Olympic silver medalist Kyle Mack. And in 2020, 686 has added 3 more amazing riders to the glove mitt team: Hannah Beeman, Laurent Demartin, and Gigi Roof, who will be putting out a signature model. You can find 686 gloves and outerwear at 686.com and finer retailers around the globe. Those are my sponsors. Now let's get back into the podcast. When do you start hitting urban? Is it at this time too where you're doing contests, or does that come a little bit later?
Before that, even, it's at 13 years old, small down rail, and I still have the clip. My brother's there. At that point, he's like not pursuing skiing anymore because he's got a girlfriend, and his girlfriend's more important than skiing at that point in school. So he's filming as well. So he's there filming me, and his girlfriend's in the car waiting, and I'm like, yo, get this. And he films me, and he's like, okay, go. And I just have this one clip of me hitting the down rail. And then I remember him dipping with his girl because his girl was bored.
So you're always doing urban and park stuff then, and I'm sure maybe a little bit more park in the beginning, although that totally changes in your career. But from the looks of it, you were really small when shit first starts happening for you. And today you're a much bigger person. Do you have a growth spurt, and does that affect everything you've already learned and the style you developed as a little guy? Does that change as you get bigger?
Yeah, luckily it didn't, but I was tiny. I look at my high school secondary 5 album, and I'm in the middle. I'm the smallest dude. I'm dating this chick that's taller and bigger than me. I always been tiny till 18 years old, as you say, but I don't remember it affecting me that much with my skiing. Maybe it was over summer and I got used to it. I don't know what the deal was with that, but maybe it just didn't play that much of an influence on my skiing.
When I think about style, when you're an up-and-comer, I'm sure you're looking to others to dial in your skiing, but it takes a while before you can master your craft and really be confident, I feel like, and that's when personal style starts developing. How long does it take you to get to the point where you're not just trying to land a trick, but you want to make it look good, and that's the most important thing?
I think it was always a part of me since my influences were all style-orientated, and even this crew. Because, like I said, there was a crew that were the mini royalty. They were called the 1012 crew, and they were Deschenaux, Pollard, and Candide, Belanger, look-alike. So everybody was doing their thing, and everybody was trying hard to be stylish and not try to do 900. They were switch 180, switch 3. So it was always a question of, yeah, just do something really well. Don't try hard.
Yeah, and I see a lot of people in contests, and the tricks that they do, they don't look as good as just a really stylish 5, but a stylish 5 will never do anything in a contest. So it's really weird how there's 2 schools of thought on how skiing is. But where do you get to the point in your life where you realize that skiing is going to be something that you're going to be able to do, and there's a career ahead of you as a skier? I mean, is there a point at some of these contests where you're like, you know what? I'm not going to go to college. I'm just going to get through high school and I'm going to focus on skiing.
Yeah, I guess like at 16, when I'm finishing high school and I'm telling the speech, everybody tells their speech in front of everybody. Like, I'm going to go to college and study administration. I'm going to go to college and study physics. And I went up and said, I'm going to just pursue a free skiing career. And that was the stamp of like, that's what I'm doing. I'm not doing anything else. And by that point, I like got maybe 30 grand of contest money acquired already, maybe a little less, but within 20 or 30 grand, living at my parents' house, not driving a car, not paying for food. I'm like, I'm making I don't even know where to spend that money at that point. So it made sense.
Were your parents cool with that? Were they supportive? Like, hey, let's run this thing and see how it goes and school will always be there?
Pretty much. My dad definitely. My mother was always like, obviously both were adamant about me finishing high school, which I did. And then my mom really wanted me to do something in college so I could easily access university. But I did like half a session in college and I missed so many courses because of contests and just skiing that it didn't work out. And I just quit school after half a session. So afterwards, they were definitely supportive, but I also didn't give them the choice.
Right, right. And I would think at this point, sponsors see what you're doing and you've got some that come to the table. And who's the first brand to step up and start supporting you?
It was Like Us, the Grum brand from Mirage. They would make clothing for kids at that point. Laikus, Like Us, and Rosignol. First contest I ever did. That was a crazy turning point. Actually, that's like maybe when I figured out that it was a possibility. They see me at this contest. I'm not even doing well at the contest, but I'm young and I'm hitting the stuff. And I'm going against all these older dudes that are 17 years old, and they notice me and support me.
And when Oraj was founded, it seemed like it was focused on the backcountry, but then it quickly pivoted to support the new school skier, and they were thriving. I mean, they were a big brand back then that everybody wanted to be on. Over the years, you and the brand were synonymous. You were like one of their premier athletes, and while they had their peaks and valleys like any clothing brand, eventually, and this is years later, they end up dropping you and focusing on backcountry skiing again. Is that the first time you were ever dropped by a brand?
Yep. Yeah, and it was basically like negotiation of, okay, Phil, you got to start wearing clothes that fit your size, and they're diminishing my contract by a big margin. So it was like I wasn't necessarily dropped, but it was a nice way to say, like, you're dropped. That was the first time.
That's pretty funny because you've had a ton of influence over your career, like I said earlier. And one of the things that I find interesting is, like, if you decide to wear a jacket that's 4 times too big for what people would expect you to wear, or at least the manufacturer would expect you to wear, within a year, you're going to see a lot of kids doing that. Is that weird to you, where it's not like kids biting your style, they're emulating you and wanting to be like you, like that crew back in the day wanting to be Candide and Mikhail? I mean, is that a cool thing to see how that evolves?
Yeah, I was really flattered and thankful because that was the reason why these companies would support me and why Oraj could allow a budget for me to be able to ski. So I took it to heart and really appreciated the support. And also it was cool that people were following that type of style that Henrik, Wallish, that era put forth with bigger clothing, tall tees. It was definitely an era where that had a big influence, and it felt good to see that people actually caught on and were down with it.
Was there any bitterness when that ends? Were you kind of pissed off?
I was pissed off kind of just because we had such a great relation. Things changed, obviously. The owner changed, and Mike Nick was no longer there because Mike Nick was the team manager for a while. When Mike was gone, there was no question I was gone too, because Mike is the man and he was keeping me on the team. But when he was said to leave the company, then I was like, fuck it, and didn't really hold any grudge against them. I was just like, yeah, they're doing their thing. I'm doing my thing, like making decisions, and it doesn't always suit everybody.
Do you look at the brand now like, whoa, they totally blew it?
A little bit, definitely. Like, I'm not seeing them like push forward something that is relevant, but at the same time, I might be totally off, and my neighbor might be like, dude, Orage is the best fucking brand out there.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, word. Sure. Depends.
Yeah, I just think they had such a big presence back then, and they don't have such a big presence now. You were on Rozzy at first, you said, but your big hard goods sponsor comes from one of the most influential skiers ever, the late J.P. Auclair. And I knew him a little bit. He was really a thoughtful dude who always seemed to be thinking about something. And from what I've learned about you, there's a lot of things in common between you two, other than being Canadian, like the critical thought process, the creativity. There's a lot of things, but he's the founder of Armada, or one of them. And how does sponsorship happen with them?
With Armada, it was through JP, as you said. JP had noticed me. Also, this guy that used to be the Quebec representative for Armada, who was called Matt Melançon. And also, I guess JP had word from Yannick B, because I'm from the same area as Yannick. We're like 25 minutes apart when he used to stay here. His home resort was the home resort that I was at. And they were both good friends, JP and Yannick. So they talked together, and I guess afterwards they were looking for a little kid, and I was luckily the dude.
Nice. So when you have a Raj and Armada supporting you early on, does that open up the eyes of the rest of the ski world and create more sponsorship opportunities for you?
Yeah, definitely Armada. Like, JP set me up so big. JP was so kind-hearted. He did so many moves for me that he didn't have to do, and he put me on a pedestal, got me in Orage Master. Like, he put me on his team at Orage Master when I was 15 years old. Then he could have chosen like anybody, and he chose me, and I was far less skilled than any of the people in the game right then. So, yeah, being with this team, Armada and Orage also, which was JP as well, definitely helped me be on a pedestal for other sponsors to see me.
Yeah, and I think when you look at the brands back then, Armada and Line, I look at Line at the time was the leader in the athlete-owned movement, although that's changed, and Armada has changed as well, but those are the two brands that people like yourself would want to be on, just based on the athletes and the history. Is there a time when you get to meet the whole Armada team for the first time, and are you starstruck at all by any of the names that you're surrounded by?
Yeah, that was in Mammoth at that Orage Master. Maybe it was the second Orage Masters I was at, and I got to the Armada house and got to meet all these dudes, and I was too shy to speak to Tanner. Tanner was obviously the god for me, and I saw Tanner, I saw Iberg at that point. Wasn't too sure who he was, but I had an idea of who he was, and definitely was very timid around those people, and I wasn't going forth at them like, hey, what's up, I'm Phil. Like, I was on the side like, oh shit, I'm here with those guys. Damn, this is nuts.
You mentioned Iberg and Tanner. Are you like a really young kid walking into a room that's a big cloud of smoke at that point?
Yeah, I remember Tanner had a chain with a lighter on it. That's my memory. And I just remember them stinking like weed. Like, it was Tanner and Iberg. I think maybe CR was around also. At that point, I had quit weed because I had already had an issue with weed early on in life. So I had to stop for a little while, and I would see that, and that was kind of like pushing me, like a little poke in the ribs, like, oh man, maybe you should do it again, Phil.
Did you get in trouble when you were younger?
Yeah, at that breaking point where I decided to pursue skiing hard at 12 years old, I got caught with my cousin. Like, he was 10 years old, I was 12. We got caught by his father at my parents' house. I was absolutely shocked. I was shook, like, damn, now my mother knows I smoke. Oh man, so I just panicked a little bit, slept it off. Hopefully when I woke up, it was all a dream. It wasn't. And so afterwards, I like changed my whole my friends at that time in school were all potheads to slowly become coke heads and whatever. They all went into harder drugs. But when I got caught, I stopped smoking weed for a little, and I was just like, I'm going to just go ski every night. And when they invite me to parties on Friday night and Saturday night, I was like, nah, I can't. I'm going skiing. And so I got really lonely at that school because I changed my circle of friends because I was no longer doing the same thing they were doing. I was skiing. So my friends were at the resort.
That's so young, but I mean, I get that happens for sure. And We talked a little bit about sponsors. I'm going to finish the sponsor part so we can get out of it. Who's supporting you today? Because I know loyalty is huge. You mentioned that earlier. Who are the brands and how long have you been with each one?
Armada, I've been with since 2003, so that's 16 years.
Damn.
I guess Armada's like the big loyalty game that I played with, and they've been so good to me. And also, like, nostalgically, with JP putting me on, I always made sure, and they made sure to try my best to stay on. So Armada's the one I kept for the longest. Otherwise, I'm with Spy Optic. I've been with Spy for 6 years. I've been with Tyrolia, the binding company, for about the same amount of time. Full Tilt Boots for 7 years. Now I recently just signed with Monster Energy just this year. Blue Tomato, which is fairly recent, and Wells Lamont, which is also fairly recent. Yeah, I think that sums it up. I might have forgotten someone.
So skiing, it sounds like it's been lucrative enough where you can buy a place across from the mountain where you grew up. Have you had any other big purchases that were made from ski dollars?
Other than just paying for music and paying for video that are relative to skiing, and a car, I guess, that I'm renting, and a winch. So I would definitely not be scared of spending money when it was relative to an investment that I would see towards skiing or art or health. So I don't mind paying a lot of money for food if that's the type of food that I like. And also if I like a piece of art or music wise, which is all incorporated in art. So that's what I spend money in. I invest in skiing, art, and health.
Okay. And I would think that money-wise, the check that you can get from an energy drink company is probably above and beyond what you would get from any other brand. Is 50% of your salary is just energy drink?
Fully. Yeah. I got to get with it. Exactly. It's a big support. It's cool that we have that type of support because it's definitely like an expensive lifestyle to live, and also like trying to support my friends that are pursuing their craft, whether in videography or music wise, and trying to build with that circle so everybody can get money. I definitely need, in this case, Monster Energy money.
I guess the last money question I have is, are you smart with your money? I mean, when you're done skiing, will you have some in the bank or invested so you're not going to have to worry about future?
Yeah, luckily my parents are stockbrokers, and I also have sort of an interest for placing money and buying some, I forget how you call it in English, but when you buy part of a company and you just let it fluctuate with the consistency of however the bank system's going. So I have invested in some companies that my money is always moving back and forth. So I had a great blessing to have parents that know where to put that money. And I talk to my parents, like, let's say cannabis is huge, like 5 years ago, like, buy me some cannabis shares in stock. Yeah. So yeah, I just buy CBD shares and just whatever's hot at the moment that I feel. But my father's got his ear to it, so he's making investment, talking to me like, what do you think about that? And I'm like, yeah, hell yeah, I got full trust in him.
That's awesome, man. Is there any stock that you put money in, look at it now and you're like, holy shit, that's really worked out for me?
I guess like the weed thing was pretty big splurge for the moment it lasted. I forget what the company's called, but otherwise, once it's in, I don't really pay much attention to it and just hope for the best and have trust in my father that he's doing his thing, and he actually loves playing with that more than I do. So I let him do his thing.
Okay. So 2006 is when you do your first Garage Masters, and that's a big thing because while you get to meet all the Armada team, and I think it puts you on a more global stage because you end up getting second place. That's a big deal because people really cared about that contest. Then we moved to 2007, and I think that's where things change in personal relationships for you. You go to the Garage European Open, and that's where you make the friendship that's going to define your life in the ski world. A guy you'll always be connected to, and Henrik Harlow. When you link up with him, is there an immediate connection where you guys just have so much in common?
Yeah, it was strange at first. He just gave me props on a certain trick I did. I did a lip 2 onto a rail, and he was like, damn, bro, that was sick. We ski together, and then we went down to the Riders Palace, which is where everybody chills during that event and everybody's lodged. And he comes to my room and he's just kicking it in my room, and basically we're not talking like for a while is my memory. And afterwards we start getting into it and start talking. He shows me videos of him like skiing, and he shows me a picture of him doing a Switch 9 sausage Tindy, and I'm like, Jesus, this kid is ridiculous. When I saw that picture of him doing a Switch 9 Tindy, maybe he was 15 at that age, 14, so I was like, damn, that's like Mikkel's shit. I can't believe he can do Mikkel style shit, and he could. Like, he was so fucking good, and I realized it at that point how damn nice he was.
When that event's over, is it something where you guys keep in touch on the internet, or do you make an effort to hang out, or how does that relationship continue? Because you don't live in the same area.
Right. It continues in the same year in the fall. I go to France for this event at Les Deux Alpes. It's a rail contest. Dishno is there. Dishno speaks with me. He's like, what's up, Phil? I'm going to Les Diablerets, which is in Switzerland, which is where Mikkel has a bunch of shot in royalty and other movies. Like, you want to come with? And I changed my plane ticket. Obviously, Mikkel's asking me to come with him somewhere. I'm like, fuck, this is crazy. I hop in the car with them, drive, and get to Budokan, where the family reunites, like over there in Switzerland. That's the little family spot, which is a house that has a mini ramp indoors, and you pay to stay there, and they're just cool as hell. And Henrik is living there, and we're put in the same room. And then that's when the super connection begins. We start filming each other and such, and that's when like our relationship started to fully build.
And then when you guys are apart, I think you make plans to be together, like he comes maybe to your place and you have backyard setups and features that you're building back then. Does that happen?
Yeah, definitely. A little bit later in life, after we set up the B&E show, prior to meeting him, I am obviously in love with hip hop. He is as well. I listen to Redman and Method Man. I'm like complete fan of Redman. I got all his solo albums at that point, and I'm like, damn, I got to make a movie with someone that's willing to do Blackout, like the album. He's Method Man, I'm Redman, and play it that type of way, like ski with those personas. And in my mind, I was like going with Paul Bergeron at that time, which I was connecting with. But life linked me with Henrik, and he was like fully down with it. So therefore, the B&E started, and we just built off of that.
You guys might have been known as the Doobie Brothers at one point. When I think of doobies, I think I need to go grab a lighter. And we've talked about you having trouble with weed back when you were younger, but I'm sure you start smoking again, or I'd hope you start smoking with a name like Casabon on Instagram and your love for the Wu-Tang. I would really hope that you were doing that. But is it something that you still partake in and it's like part of your life?
Yeah, definitely. It's been ever since when I quit. Maybe there was a 3-year span where I didn't smoke, was reintroduced to it, and it fitted me really well. Obviously, I always liked weed. The only problem with it was authority behind weed and my parents disliking it and me always having to hide to do it. So, like, that was the tricky part. But when I started traveling and there was no authority to tell me, like, no, you can't do this, I was definitely dipping my toes in the water and loving it. And yeah, I've definitely used cannabis for a while, whether like in the creative process of making an edit after skiing, sometimes within skiing, and just definitely try now to use it in a respect to it, because it's such a nice plant that it's easy to like just take it in all the time. But I try to regulate.
It's time for me to take my last sponsor break, and I'm going to start out with Spy Optic. For 25 years, Spy has been making the best sunglasses and goggles on the market. Yeah, there's a lot of good products out there, but no other lens on the market comes close to Spy's contrast and mood-enhancing Happy Lens. Don't believe me? Next time you're at the shop, try a bunch of goggles on, and then put on a pair of Spys. You'll see the difference. Another thing you can see is how much better Spy goggles look compared to the competition. I keep thinking the other brands will catch up in fit and finish, but they don't. For listening to the show, I'm going to make it easier than ever for you to rock a pair of Spy goggles, sunglasses, whatever. All you need to do is go to spyoptic.com, do your shopping, and when you check out, use the code POWEL20, that's all one word, and you'll get 20% off your order. My final sponsor is the 10 Barrel Brewery out of Bend, Oregon. They have been brewing my favorite Northwest beer since 2006, and since they started brewing beer, they've been supporting the sports we love. If you aren't sure about what 10 Barrel's been doing in the action sports space, well, I'll tell you. This year, they produced a ski movie with Lucas Walks called Watch This. They produced a snowboard movie with Curtis Cizik called Hold My Beer. They have signature beers that donate to causes like Protect Our Winters, and they have the dates ready for this year's Hella Big Air events, which are a party on the snow and have some big prize money for the riders. The first event is at Copper on March 2nd. Next up, it's Bachelor March 28th. And everything closes out with a new stop at Mount Hood Meadows on April 18th. If all of that isn't cool enough, the people at 10 Barrel, they're all skiers, snowboarders, and bikers. So next time you head to the store, buy some 10 Barrel and support the brand that really makes a difference in the sports we love. Those are my sponsors. Now let's get back into the podcast. Everyone knows that you and Henrik have a love for them. Is there a personal relationship with them? Like, have you been to Shaolin and smoked blunts with them?
Damn. That would have been epic. Not yet, but in the near future, I'm sure that could happen. I actually smoked with Masakilla, which was linked by a helmet company that Henrik was rocking back in the day, and got to play a chess game with Masta. Got to go on stage with Ghostface, Capadona, and Jizza, but that was unrelated to any of the skiing stuff. Also, through Masakilla, I had a relationship with his agent at the time, which is Mustafa, and he now runs a company called 36 Chambers, which is Rizza's company. So therefore, I still have a relation with Mustafa, and we exchange quite a bit. I actually just made a video for them. So I'm still in connection with some of the people relative to Wu-Tang, but definitely not caught up on trying to be in their toes or be in front of them or anything. It definitely would be fun to smoke a blunt with any of the members or all of them.
Yeah. And while most would argue that weed is not a healthy habit and you've been known to lead a healthy lifestyle, one thing that I do find interesting that is healthy is your love of mushrooms. And I'm not going to talk about the hallucinogenic kind by any means, because maybe we'll talk about that later in another part of the show. But I hear you use mushrooms for all different types of treatments. I know you were talking about earlier that you use things for concussions and things like that. What benefits of legal mushrooms have you found, and what do you take?
The benefits is basically like the whole process of going out in the woods and picking the mushroom and being out in the woods and doing the whole process of tincture, which is like made with alcohol. So the mushrooms that I harvest here mostly are chaga, reishi, chanterelles, oysters, and boletes, and a few polypores. But my big go-tos are definitely chaga and reishi, which I make tinctures and teas out of. And I was sick a bunch in life with strep throat, and I had coughs like every 4 months. I had a low immune system, and I don't know how I got to my love for mushroom. I guess I know it's because of psychedelic mushroom in the first place. They opened my eyes. I was like, God damn, this shit's incredible. And then I started using and going in the woods and figuring out which was what. And then like I researched and I made these tinctures that I would use, and I stopped getting sick, whether it was placebo or not. I like fully got rid of the strep throat problem, and they are known for being anti-inflammatory, full of antioxidants. The benefits goes on, but mainly just like the health of the process of doing all that and being in peace in the woods is the most fulfilling part.
So when you get through your surgery, you're in rehab and you might have an angry knee, or is there a mushroom that you'll take that you think will help with that?
Yeah, I think chaga and reishi, then again, like are both really good anti-inflammatories. I would definitely go more for chaga for that purpose. I'm drinking some as we speak. I try to drink some like 4 or 5 times a week.
Okay. We'll get back to skiing. 2007 is the year with Henrik where you meet up with him. but I think you also start filming with level 1. You get some clips in turbo. And then 2008 and 2009, you film fully with level 1. And you had filmed smaller projects before. Is filming with level 1 just a different project that's going to get you a lot more global exposure? Like, can you feel that?
Fully. Yeah, that was my big open door to the ski scene. That's when I felt I made it as a professional skier, was when Frito Cody hit me up because he saw that edit I had made called B-Dog Gone Wild. And he was like, damn, you're skiing nice. I think you should be in our next movie. We met, like you said, through Turbo. I met Frito and he saw me ski a little bit, but it was just on this down rail. It was quick. But after I released that edit of my season that year, 07-08, he's like, damn, Phil, you're really nice. Let's get together with JF, because JF was already in level 1, JF Fool. And Henrik was starting to film with them, and they knew I had a relationship with Henrik. So for them, it was like, yeah, we're going to go for these 2 grums.
You film with them for a couple years, and everyone knows who you are and the style you bring to the table. And I think it's around that time that you start the B&E show, and the timing couldn't have been more perfect. People are just expecting free content on the internet. You two are the future of skiing, and you're working to deliver it. When you planned it, did you have any idea that it would be as popular as it was?
No, definitely not. It was just natural to do so, but I had no idea it would catch on that much. Just like when I had done that first edit, B-Dog Gone Wild, I had no expectation of being hit up by a big ski film company that was like, you're nice, let's get together. It was just like, that's what I did because I loved skiing so much, and in the summer I couldn't ski, so I was like, I'm gonna try this editing thing. And actually, like, that was a big skill upgrade within the whole field of skiing that I accentuated on, and that helped me quite a bunch.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it as there's so many nuances to the way that you ski, so many little details that people may not see if they're editing it, so it can be lost. But when you take control of it, you can control how your skiing is seen by the public. And then you look at your editing, and while it's trippy as fuck to me, it's not to the point where it makes you want to look away. It's like a nice balance of the music and the skiing and all the effects that you're putting into it. How long does it take you to get to feel like you're comfortable with putting something out that the world can see?
Yeah, good question. Is still today, now I'm nicest with my editing skill, because at that point, like you said, I'm doing like a lot. I'm putting layers over layers and making it trippy. So I look back at that stuff and like, God damn, like I was losing it sort of. But at that point, that's what felt good. I was really trying to match lyrics and trying to do the best that I could with my little knowledge of editing.
But filming isn't the end all for you by any means. You still are competing, and I would think a comp highlight would be your first X Games in 2009. You take 5th, and that's crazy for you because you're never really on that big of a stage. Is that intimidating, going to the X Games?
Yeah, that was real intimidating. That was my first time really connecting with Tanner, let's say, and all the scene. Like, I remember being in a conversation circle with CR and Sage Catabriga, and like all the super gods of skiing were there. So that was definitely intimidating. I remember I was staying at the Armada spot at that point, and I was put in a room. It was a fucking mansion. Those places are so big in Aspen. I was lost in that mansion in the back somewhere, and I'm staying there on my own. I'm basically not coming out the room. I'm only thinking about my run. I'm like, oh, that's where I should place this trick. And I'm thinking a bunch. So I barely got to connect with the dudes except for after the event's done. When the event's done, I'm like, cool, I can let it go now. I can let loose.
I look at those contests. I think you do 3 more of those X Games. I think 4th is your best finish ever. But X Games is not a style contest. And I think that makes it hard for you to ever really win because judges want to see insane tricks for a rider to make the podium, but you're not all about insane tricks as much as style and creativity. Do you go into a lot of contests like that thinking that even if you land everything, it's still going to be tough for you to win?
Right. It wasn't even an option to win with the tricks that these people were doing, like you're saying, and it being so focused on tricks. And they can't really give, or they could have. It was a decision of the judges to give more reward to style, but style is so objective compared to like comparing a dub 12 to a dub 14. Like he spun 180 more. He's the best. So as you say, I kind of like knew that I wasn't going to be on top, but I knew that I kind of had to be in the scene to be relevant and also have the support of these companies and also try my luck, because that day maybe those people doing the doubles would crash and I would come in and land my shit and be like, yabba.
After these contests is when you join forces with Tanner and Iberg and Inspired is created. What made Inspired different than Level 1 or anything else out there for that matter?
Yeah, what happened is in the iTrip segment of Level 1, it was working out real good, and they told me, nah, you should just wait till you see your segment before we send it out. I was like, oh, okay, sure, but I'm really picky. I'm really trying to see my segment before I go to the premiere. And they're like, nah, you're going to be stoked. And so I show up at the premiere, and my song of choice was Redman Smash Something, and I'm like crazy meticulous about shit, but they censored the whole chorus. It's like, if you want that, and it's like, oh, where are the words in there? Like, that's the part of the tune where people get hyped up. And when that happened, I was like, damn, I would have went for a different choice of song if I knew that that was going to be censored. So I got butthurt from that being like too damn picky with my shit. And also Henrik had a certain trick that he was in my segment, and he was supposed to have like this switch dub 9 that he did that was like the illest switch dub 9 ever, and they didn't put it in. So when I saw the segment and Henrik saw the segment, we're like, damn, like it was a letdown for us. And at that point, Iberg and Tanner was coming out with Inspired. So it brought us together, Henrik and I, even stronger. Like, let's just fully commit to this.
And is Iberg the driving force behind Inspired, and are you still able to edit your own segments?
He gave us full control, and that was the reason why we went in, because Henrik and I were skilled at editing, so we do that. And Iberg's like, I'll let you do whatever you want. Just put the Globe logo in the beginning. And at that time, when iTrip came out, we just came back from New Zealand, and we just filmed for this piece called Muddy Winters, which is arguably the best B&E show we've ever created. So we got that in our pocket right now. And Iberg's like, let's see a Inspired logo at the beginning of that. And then we're like, Eric Iberg and Tanner all both are gods to Henrik and I. I've dreamt to be in an Iberg movie. He made my favorite movie. So I'm like, no question, we're going for it.
And at this point in your career, you're doing Inspired, or you're partnered up with Inspired. You've done the X Games like 4 years in a row. And the biggest event in the world is the Olympics. And first, when you hear that skiing is going to be part of the Olympic Games, are you excited for it? Are you scared for the authenticity of the sport? What are your thoughts?
Not feeling it so much at that point. Not really putting it into perspective either quite so much. And also letting room for possibility that it might be a good thing for the sport. So I was sort of neutral about it. Like, I might bitch about it, but I might still be wrong. Maybe it's going to be good. So I was trying to hold back my opinion. And also a Canadian team was like giving me a great opportunity that I couldn't refuse. They were like, Phil, we'll put you on the A team. We'll pay for every flights for the contest season, and we'll pay you a trip to New Zealand and a trip to Mammoth to go train. And I'm like, sure, I'll ride that wave.
Does that come with strings though?
Yeah, exactly. So I'm trying to film more so than I'm trying to compete. And they're like, oh, I'm in Whistler, and those guys are as well. I'm staying with Henrik and Phil Benjamin, filming for the Education of Style. It's puking out. They're like, Phil, we're going to go hit the airbag so you can get your doubles in. You want to come? I'm like, nah, I'm trying to film for Education of Style. And so that keeps on going. I'm like, nah, I can't go. I'm trying to film for this instead. And so eventually they're like, Phil, you're cut off the team. Something that I actually like subconsciously wanted, because I understood as soon as those dudes stepped in and I was on a team, I started doing pretty bad at contests just because it was awkward for me to have someone at the top of the run, like next to me telling me stuff. And I was like, damn, the vibe really changed. Maybe it was just in my mind, but it fully changed for me. And I was like, damn, I'm not with it anymore at all with this scene.
Sounds like it's back to the race days of structure and regimen.
It fully was. Yep.
But things are still going with Inspired, and I feel like that brand had legs. I mean, the name was huge in skiing, but I feel like it had potential to evolve outside of it. You guys had the best athletes, you made 4 movies, and you can see the progression of your skiing in them because there's more backcountry riding as you get towards the later years of these movies. But when Inspired comes to a close, do you see the end coming, or is it a total shock to you?
I guess it was a shock pretty much. Iberg obviously got us aware way before he did the move. We were on touring for Be Inspired. It was in 2016, so we're on tour, and Iberg's got kids and is going back and forth to Denmark and is living over there, so it's harder for him. And he's like, Tanner was the face of Inspired, but Iberg was the mind. Like he was the brain. He was making all the moves and getting everybody the plan. And so when Iberg was not able to sustain himself, then like I understood that was it for Inspired. And yeah, definitely wasn't my favorite news to learn.
When it ended, do you ever think about pulling a Pollard and just creating your own production house to release movies where you control everything?
Yeah, kind of. But at the same time, at that point, I put so much effort forth the brand of Inspired that I'm like not too sure what to do. Like, is it the time to start something new? Because like I love the image of Inspired, love the name, the logo, all that's behind it. So at that point, I need like a breather to know how to come back if I'm going to do so. But regarding Pollard, that's like monumental inspiration that he did do so. Like, big ups to him, because I wish I went that route as well and created my own. But then again, I'm really happy where I'm at.
And contest-wise, contests aren't done for you. The X Games creates an event that seems to be made for a guy like you. X Games Real Street, and it's a video edit battle that'll focus on hammers and style. You get the invite that first year that only a select few get. What made you decline it that first year?
I was filming for Be Inspired at that point. We were in the second year of filming for Be Inspired. It was a 2-year project. We were starting the second year, and I had a good first year at it. So I was like, I'm going to just focus on that. No contest. Also, like, put in perspective that it's Iberg's last movie. He just rallied up Cormega, Sizzla, Cali P, Kirk Knight, amongst like many other artists, Dylan Cooper, Assassin, to make this soundtrack that's just like banging. For an exclusive soundtrack, I don't know if skiing's ever seen anything close to an exclusive soundtrack with that many heavy hitters. So I'm like, yeah, I'm going to keep going for this one because we got something going.
But you do take the invite for the 2018 X Games and you team up with Brady Perrin behind the lens. Are you still handling the editing or do you let him edit in that one?
We both go back and forth with the editing. Brady's staying at my house at that point, and we're on the computer screen, and both of us take turns and we edit, and I'm like relentless with this shit, so I'm always on the screen just like trying to tweak and figure out ways. And Brady's on his computer and he's like, oh, check this out. And obviously he has a result that's like worthwhile gold, and I'm like, oh, word, that's how those images connect. So we're both on it.
And you end up taking the win that year, and I would think it's a big celebration because the X Games are a big deal. But it's also something that I think validates everything you've done in your career to the masses, because if you're like flying on a plane next to a total stranger and they ask you what you do on your skis, they might not get it at all. But then you're like, oh yeah, and I won the X Games gold medal, and then all of a sudden there's a ton of respect for you. Does that change things to a lot of people and how they act towards you?
Not so much, since I'm low-key with it. Just like in town, in my hometown, when I go to the skate park and some kids learned it, then that changed something for them for sure. Like now I'm like, X Games gold medalist, so they definitely know about it since it's like the town's talking and the local newspapers getting the story. So that did a little something for that aspect. But otherwise, I am not wearing my medal or screaming and shouting it, so it didn't change much outside of the skate park, I'd say, where I hang out in the summer.
You win it again in 2019, another edit that's full of hammers and style, but the thing that really sticks out, or what really doesn't stick out, is what you were skiing on. You have a pro model that doesn't have edges. When do you come up with that concept?
The year before that I won X Games, I wanted to have very soft skis without having to break them into, and also be sure that I could use them on wood rails, because for that first year of X Games, I'm like fresh off going to that down wooden rail feature, switch 50-50. That's my like first time I put my skis in months and months. So I'm like trying to have soft skis and skis that I really can feel rather than like skis that I haven't broke into. And so I asked for them to make them, and they give me 2 prototypes, and it works out really well. And they see that in my edit, I ended up using only the edgeless that year, basically, except for 1 or 2 clips. So they're like, Phil, would you want to push forward with that? And I'm like, sure. If you guys are willing to produce them and make it a good end product, then let's present it to the world. I definitely didn't do it in the purpose of people using it other than myself.
For an advantage?
Fully, it was, I need these edgeless to do these features. Can you make them? And then they're like, yeah, let's make them for everybody 2 years later. And now they're on the market, and we're going to know how they did by the end of the year. I'm looking forward to hearing.
The factory must have been wondering what the fuck is going on, because they've made skis forever based on having edges. Do you hear any stories about, oh man, at the factory they were going crazy because there's no edges on these things?
The way they brought it up to me is it was a headache for the Armada designer, the engineer, but otherwise I think they fairly did it easily. But good question here. I'm not aware of it enough how it was at the end of the factory.
And what other pro models have you had, or what recent pro models do you have?
B-Dog, Armadas, B&E boots, and Spy goggles were my most recent pro models.
I only asked that because I wanted to get a Josh Malchek question in there, because he was the man over there at Full Tilt for a long time. And are you aware of the news with Josh Malchek?
That he just quit Line?
Yeah, and Full Tilt.
And Full Tilt.
Well, he's no longer
Damn.
with those companies, yeah.
Oh, word. Damn. I just read the topic that says he quit Line, but I wasn't sure about, that's a shame. Josh was really great for those brands, I thought.
Yeah, and I just wanted you to say that Josh is really great for those brands because I love Josh. I was going to get him to do inappropriate questions, but that's not his style, and he said he hadn't even talked to you about it, so I'm the asshole who's just bringing it up and sharing that with you. Sorry about that.
Hell yeah, good for him. Definitely shout out to Josh.
Spy goggles, you've got a pro model with them. I think everybody should buy them, because if they do, they get 20% off by using a code that I have in the podcast somewhere, which I think they should all do. But we've been going for a little while, and you have so many projects that I could go on and on about. But the recent one, Nuance, is your artful masterpiece. It's really moody and really well done. Is this one where you're in the editing process, or do you finally give control of editing to Brady, or how does that work?
Fully controlled to Brady as far as the editing process goes. Brady fully went in on that one, and that was his baby. He would hit me up and ask me questions like, does that go? How'd that go? And I'd give my opinion, but mainly like fully Brady went in with it and really read who I was. At that point, we've been together like for a few months, almost 24/7 within the year. So we know each other really well, and he also knows himself really well in the first place. So therefore enables him to make a montage on what he got in Quebec of the places where I took him. That's golden and definitely worthwhile. One of my favorite pieces that I've been a part.
When you see that for the first time, Is it a sigh of relief where you're like, finally, I can give control of something to someone else and they have the same vision as me and I don't have to worry about anything?
Exactly. That felt so damn nice because it's so hard at some point to reinvent yourself and reinvent your style of editing and your approach. And Brady obviously has a way different approach and can also like go places where I wouldn't necessarily tend to go with myself. And the skiing, like from an outside perspective, I'm like, that's one of the biggest blessings, was to be able to have that person that has a deep understanding of who I am, how I see the skiing, and also he himself was a skier and knows what slides and what doesn't. So therefore makes the product very, very authentic and spot on for the type of shit we're trying to touch.
And everyone can see Nuance in all your projects online because there's a ton of them that you've put out over the years. And this all leads us to today, and we've talked a ton about the injury, and you're going to be back soon enough. But the body can only take so much. So when the professional ski chapter is over for you, and I'm not going to put any timeline on it because that doesn't matter, but when you're done with it, do you have anything else that you want to pursue after?
Yeah, most likely it's going to come naturally, I assume. And with the editing skills I've built and also the directive skills for movies that I built and just all around like the craftsmanship that I've pursued, I think that something's going to form out of all that and really come to my lap just by focusing on sticking to what I know best and maybe having a year or two of being confused, but still like sticking to my guns. But I think that within the realm of movie making, editing, skiing, mentoring, and just all over art, that's going to be my field still. I don't think I'm ever going to get something that's too structured and too plain. I'm just going to stay somewhere where I can build stuff that feels really good and that I don't have to wake up to go to a work that I got to schedule.
Yeah, that would absolutely suck, especially based on the life that you've led so far. I don't think you could just go to a desk job. That just doesn't happen for a dude like you. But at this point in the show, I have something called Inappropriate Questions. And I got Ski Royalty to come ask these inappropriate questions. He's a guy who owns a business called Inspired Paws. If anybody has a dog, you could check out inspiredpaws.com. He's got all the CBD, leashes, all kinds of cool shit. I know my dog is getting some stuff right now that I have on order. But I have Eric Iberg, who created the first movie that put style in your head. And he's going to ask you 3 inappropriate questions. And I'm going to kick off it with question number 1.
All right, my first inappropriate question. I know you're a connoisseur of mushrooms, and I'm curious if by doing any of these funky mushrooms that you do you think it helps you tap into any special powers in skiing that other people may not have because they don't do that?
Yeah, definitely. I would assume, and it's hard to tell because I'm living with myself, but within my spiritual growth and just growth of myself, mushroom has been a key thing just as far as dissolving the ego and letting go of things that were unnecessary. Therefore, like also stimulating neural patterns that aren't necessarily like happening otherwise. I seen things in a different perspective when I use these mushrooms, and I use them 4 days a week. Right now I'm testing the microdose thing, and I don't know how it would go with me not using them, if anything would be much different, but they definitely have helped me, and I enjoy them very much for how they make me feel and what I've learned through them. And yeah, perhaps they have given me superpowers because I can talk to plants and animals. I mean, yeah, it's a great tool.
Do you ever take them when you ski?
I've done that a few times and it's been fucking great. I actually did it last year with a friend and we had a killer day, and he was just back on his snowboard and he had just lived the hardship. He just stopped his relationship for 8 years with a girl, and I show up at the resort and sure enough, like, he's like, "Hey Phil, check out, I got a gift for you," and he has chaga for me. And I'm like, "Booyah!" And then I'm like, "Look at my gift," and I have the magic mushroom thing. He's like, "Oh, not too sure." I'm like, "You're gonna love it, man." and he takes them, and we both take them, and we had an awesome day, and he fucking crushed it. He was on the snowboard, and he did moves that he didn't do in 10 years, like cork fives and shit. He was jaw dropped, so definitely a special tool.
Nice. We'll go into question number 2.
Question number 2 is kind of an ignorant question. I'm just curious, like I seen Henrik cut off his dreadlocks and Tanner cut off his. I'm wondering if you're going to do it too.
And it sounds like you might have answered that question, but when did you cut your dreadlocks off?
Yeah, in November, I had so many dreams about cutting my dreadlocks off. It was starting to get heavy and not that nice in the sleep. And for my girlfriend, also slapping her all upon the face. So Brady showed up at my house and he was like, cut him off, dude. And I was just like, I kind of was waiting for that type of motivation from someone. And I just cut him myself. And I'm feeling great and lightheaded.
Did you save them?
Oh, no, I'm not that guy.
Did you used to hide stuff in your dreadlocks when you had them?
I used to put my nano iPod, which is a little clippable iPod, at the gym. I'd lock it in on my dreadlocks. That won't be an option anymore.
All right, and we will go with his final inappropriate question.
Have you ever shit yourself from taking a bad crash?
That's really inappropriate, Iberg. No, not fully poop. No, I try to hold those in as much as possible these days and keep them for the toilet. Hopefully it never happens, but let's see. No, I can't recall doing it.
Well, that is a good thing that you can't recall that, because it would be a terrible slam, probably taking something to the ass that wouldn't feel good. It would be disgusting afterwards, and you would not walk right for a few days, I'm sure. But that's the end of inappropriate questions, and I want to thank you for your time and thank you for your skiing, because while there's a lot of people out there that huck shit and have crazy tricks that I would never expect you to do, everything you do looks good. And to me, the most important thing is style. I think to you as well. And while I don't have it, you ooze style. And it's always amazing to watch one of your edits. And I could go on and on about how cool your skiing looks, but you know it and the world knows it. And thank you, man.
I appreciate you, dude. Thanks for putting me on.
So that was time with Phil Casabon. And that was a really interesting conversation. I look at Phil as one of those skiers like Pep, Pollard, and Henrik, the type of skier where when you see them ski anything, the effortless style that they bring to the table is just different. And then you talk to him, and like those guys, Phil likes to get deep about things. There's a lot of thought behind everything he does, and that's how it should be. Now, I know if you're a skier who focuses on contests, style sometimes goes out the window because degree of difficulty seems to always trump degree of style. But I have a respect for a dude like Phil, who is like, nope, my shit is gonna look good all the time. But Phil is no contest skier. And with videos, he's had to say to himself, if the people editing my shit don't make it look how I want, well, I'm gonna go learn that skill myself. Kinda reminds me of the movie Major League, where Pedro Serrano decides that he doesn't need voodoo to hit the ball, and he's like, fuck you, Jobu, I do it myself. And that's pretty much what Phil has done with his skiing. So that's the podcast for this week. At this point, I want to ask you to do something for me. I want you to buy a Traeger grill. Why? I want you to eat as good as I do, and they gave me a grill, and I swear by it. I use it 4 times a week, and it's one of those things where it's idiot-proof, and I know because I'm usually an idiot when it comes to cooking. But this thing, I connect it to my phone, put a probe in my meat, which is really fun to say, and go work on my computer. Once the probe reaches its desired temperature, I know my dinner is going to be so good. I mean, this thing is so good that when I ask my 10-year-old what his favorite food is, he says smoked tri-tip and then pizza. That's a tribute to how badass a product a Traeger grill is. What's also badass are my sponsors who make this show happen. They're the best in class in the industry, and I hope you support them. They are Evo, Spy Optic, Stanley, 686, and the 10 Barrel Brewery. Have a great week, everyone.